What's happening, people? So I thought I'd kick the day off with a nice positive video for you to think about. You may be on the way to work at the minute, you may have the morning off, or whatever your morning brings. But there's a thing that happens a lot of the time, especially in the winter, where people feel like they're, I guess, like demotivated, and they have like a period where they just feel a bit more flat. They feel a bit more like they don't want to move. They're not as fired up as they are in the summer. And quite simply, it's obviously because of the time of year it is. It makes a massive difference. But what we've got to try and do is stop people going into a suffering period, because quite often people do suffer in the winter, where I guess like they allow everything to get on top of them. They start to feel demotivated. It spirals into more demotivation, and you start to slow down on everything and maybe feel negative. But the thing that I want to really sort of like emphasize at the moment is that suffering only comes from obsession of yourself. Now, it's something that I listened to on a Tony Robbins thing a couple of weeks ago, and it stuck with me because when you think about that sentence, that suffering only comes from the obsession of yourself, when you think about that, break it down and understand it, it makes a lot of sense. People will suffer for different reasons, and people, they get worse. They suffer more. And it's because they're obsessing on themselves. They're obsessing on the situation that they're in. And they're allowing the situation to take over and to be the forefront of their mind. And that is simply it. So when you think about the successful people, whoever you want to class this as or label this as, like the successful people that always seem to be winning, always seem to be overcoming like things that are happening. But that's because they're not obsessing on their suffering. Does it mean they're not suffering? No, it does not mean they're not suffering. Actually, most successful people suffer more in a more of a bigger effect. However, it doesn't affect them as much. And that's the difference. And that is exactly the thing that you need to focus on if you feel like you're suffering. Because the more you think about that one thing, the worse it becomes. It's very similar to anxiety. I have, for many years, suffered with anxiety. And anxiety is something that you build up. It's like I look at it like a pressure tap. It's a pressure tap that builds up, and it's because you're focusing on that same thing. And again, this is exactly the same as the obsession of yourself. If you obsess on these incidences, these situations, then they're going to manifest into something bigger. So something that's so simple, not simple at the time, I get, but something that's simple to try and figure out and to master is to pattern interrupt things. So to interrupt your pattern of what your thought process is. Now, I'm not saying completely distract yourself all the time. Like, let's just say you've got a £10,000 bill that you need to pay, and you need to now, let's forget it, let's distract yourself. It's not quite as simple as that. But it's making sure that you're managing things in a better way for your mind. So making sure you are focused on the positive that you can focus on at that point. Now, again, I know that we hear this often, this cheesy line of like, turn negatives into positives. It's a little bit like turn fat into muscle. You can't turn it into it. It doesn't work. But what we do is we don't turn it into, we focus on. And that's the difference. And again, by focusing on the positives, being grateful for the things you've got, setting your day off in a good way, like ensuring that you're feeding your mind in positive ways, will then help you and make sure that you stay positive. So this is how we feed ourselves in a more positive way to stop the obsession. So if you can think about that for yourself, like look at a situation that you may be going through right now that's becoming obsessive because it's this one situation. You know, another funny way of looking at it, it's like having a spot on your face, right? You have a spot on your face, the more you touch it, the more you look in the mirror, the more it becomes a problem. If you hadn't touched it and hadn't looked at it so often, probably no one would have said anything. But that is the exact same thing. So you need to think about, you know, like how you approach things, how you manage things, and the things that you're focusing on to make sure that your mind is being fed the right things that you need to stay positive and not be obsessed by your, you know, your suffering, your pains, your negatives and your fears, etc. Guys, I hope that helps. Thought I'd share a little bit of love for the day. Share it, like, and tag people if you think it'll help them too.